Alrighty, good evening. Ooh, that was loud. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for coming this evening, and for the folks that are watching online as well, thank you for your participation. And so what we're going to do this evening, I'm Jay Cook with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. I'm the Article 3 team leader. And so what we're going to do tonight is I'll have a presentation, and it's intended, we're going to go through a lot of the history on how the department came up with its current proposal on trail cameras on water, quarter mile from water. We're going to go through our rationale in that decision-making process. We're going to go through the different alternatives that we went through. And then the main purpose today, and I'll repeat this as we go through the presentation, but what we're doing tonight is specific to trail cameras on water and getting recommendations from the public on alternatives to that proposal. So that's the main focus of this evening. So I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll introduce the rest of the team here. We do have a facilitator tonight to kind of help us when it gets time for getting your recommendations. There's some white sheets in the back. If you have one, we'll read it up here when we get to that section of the presentation, as well as we'll get recommendations from the folks that are online this evening as well. So with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go through, and then we can answer questions or clarifications later on, but initially we'll try to answer as many as we can in the presentation itself, because based on what we've seen from the comments that we received over time, and even as early today, most of which should be addressed this evening in the presentation. And so Article 3 is the taking and handling of wildlife, and so what we're doing tonight, we're just specifically looking at trail cameras on water. The Article 3 team members, and this is the internal team. Just to explain a little bit about the process, every 5 years we have to review our rules. So we establish an internal team to do that. We go through a review phase. We look at all the comments. We respond to the external comments during the rule review phase. That proposal is taken to the commission. It eventually goes to the governor's regulatory review committee. If that's approved, then we request permission to go into the rulemaking process. That's the process that we're in now. And so I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So just to introduce some of our team members, Craig McMullen. He's our team sponsor. I'm Jay Cook. I'm the lead for the Article 3 team. We have Amber Munig. I'm Andy Clark. Celeste Cook. Some of the members that weren't able to make it tonight, Del Hadjic. Dave Daniels. Dave is going to be our facilitator tonight. And our other member, and Scott Fisher is also here as well. Okay, just to kind of go back through the chronology of our process that we went through, roughly in about at the end of the last review cycle, the department started receiving comments related to the regulated use of trail cameras since about 2012. For this process, the rulemaking portion of it started in late 2015. So this team here has been working on this proposals and everything else in Article 3 since 2015. And as part of that process, we held a commission workshop with our commission. It was an open public meeting. We helped to craft or pare down just to check with the commission that we're on the right track as far as proposals go moving forward. We presented specifically this and other components of Article 3 at 5 open public commission meetings through since 2015. The notice of proposed rulemaking was posted to our department website. There were 6 press releases, Facebook posts, e-news. We also conducted a webinar on March 29th, which also is in coordination with the official public rulemaking public comment period that ran from March 15th to April 16th. Part of our public outreach, in addition to the other things I just mentioned, we met with multiple sportsmen's organizations and presented the proposals, not only just this one, but all of the other components of Article 3. And just a kind of a status update so you're aware of where we currently are at. And the final rulemaking package was presented to the commission on May 4th. However, the commission, there was a 2-2 vote, so it was not approved at that time. However, the Commission asked the Department to develop additional alternatives and return to the June meeting with alternatives for regulating passive trail cameras on developed water sources, which is the quarter-mile restriction. So that is the main purpose here tonight, is to get your thoughts on additional proposals that we potentially didn't consider before or evaluate before. And on June 8th, the Commission will reconsider the rulemaking. The actions that it can take at that Commission meeting is to vote to approve the existing proposal, amend it, deny the rulemaking, which could prompt additional rulemaking processes, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And so again, just to kind of restate the primary purpose of tonight's meeting is, again, the Department asks us to explore whether the additional alternatives for the use of trail cameras within a quarter mile of developed water sources that the Department had not yet analyzed. So again, that's what we're looking for this evening, is additional thoughts or concepts that we might not have considered. And then again, solely we're presenting the Department will solely present alternatives that were analyzed prior to making the recommendation to the Commission, and hear your ideas for new alternatives not previously considered. So part of what I'm going to do tonight is go through the criteria we use to evaluate different proposals. When we looked at comments from the public, we have a list of criteria that we went through. We had about 9 different proposals that we had considered throughout the process since about 2015. Another component, and this was also, I wanted to clarify, fair chase. There's some confusion about what that body does, so I was going to explain a little bit more about it this evening. So the fair chase has a couple different components to it. The first is the Department formed what we call the Fair Chase Committee, and it's comprised of sportsmen's organizations, industry representatives, Department staff, Commission members, and it was established to address fair chase issues, evaluate methods and devices, and make recommendations to the Department. Now, with that said, during that committee, they helped develop the Commission's fair chase policy. And again, we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, so forgive me if it's a bit repetitive, but a lot of what we did to evaluate the Article 3 package was using the Commission's fair chase policy as a guide. And the Commission's policy was developed after considering many different definitions and philosophies of fair chase, and it became effective on January 6th of 2015. Now, there's more to the policy, and there is copies of the policy in the back of the room where you came in, but its primary purpose was to evaluate whether a technology or practice is a fair chase issue. And there's 3 main tenets to that, and again, we use these 3 main tenets to evaluate the rule package along with many other things that we're required to do, but these are the 3 main tenets of the Commission's fair chase policy. And he goes, does the technology or practice allow a hunter or angler to locate or take wildlife without acquiring necessary hunting and angling skills or competency? Does the technology or practice allow a hunter or angler to pursue or take wildlife without being physically present and pursuing wildlife in the field? And lastly, does the technology or practice make harvesting wildlife almost certain and or prevent wildlife from eluding detection or take? As part of our process, we benchmarked with other states. There are roughly 6 that currently have some form of trail camera restriction. Several other states are currently in the process of implementing restrictions, as well as our other research showed that many other states are looking into to have restrictions on trail cameras and other electronic devices. So it's we did search nationwide, and that's what we came up with so far. In our evaluation process, we had some main criteria that we looked through, and so I'll go through each one of these and explain a little bit more about it. As part of our evaluation, we look at, this is the taking and handling of wildlife that is a Commission rule that falls within the Commission's authority. So those impacts we have to look at, is it related to the Commission's authority to take and handle wildlife? So we looked at all of the different rules in our process and engage whether it was in the Commission's authority to make changes. or add new regulations or take ones off just to verify that it is within the Commission's authority. Also a big component, and like I mentioned before, a lot of what we evaluated was specifically from the Commission's fair chase policy and being compliant with it as we believed it to be. Some of the other things that are required for us to look at through the Governor's Regulatory Review Council, we have to look at things. Is a regulation going to provide additional regulatory burden? Is it clear and concise to the public? We have to look at economic impacts to both the individuals and the industry. We look at things like level of complexity, administration, enforcement. We look at is the regulation consistent? Are we able to implement it consistently, and is it consistent with other regulations that we have in this article and other rules and statutes? We looked at social impacts, both from consumptive and non-consumptive wildlife users, and also we did research and look, is there a biological impact of the use of cameras? So in our process, the next step, I'll go through the different alternatives that we looked at, and each one of these apply to those different alternatives, and I'll talk a little bit more about them, how we felt about each one of those. Okay, so we had a pretty wide range of alternatives, and many of which that you see here were based. A lot of them were public comments. A lot of them was internal review. Some was based on queries from our commission, and so all of these things that we did look at. And so I'll go into each one a little bit and clarify what they were and our rationale that we used to either move them forward or not move them forward. So it runs the full gamut to taking no action at all. That was one of the alternatives that we evaluated, so that means there would be no camera restrictions. When we evaluated, we didn't think that complied with the Commission's fair chase policy with the current uses of trail cameras. We looked at a complete ban on the use of live action cameras and passive action cameras. Again, that means a complete ban. And again, partially why we didn't want to do that was that we felt was overly regulatory to do it on that broad of a span, a complete ban on both types of cameras. However, again, it's the broader aspect, and does it comply with fair chase? Does it comply with the other things that we have to look at? But that particular one, the main basis, where we just felt it was overly regulatory, and we didn't move forward with that one, with the exception of the live action camera. And these were both related. That was an ask by the Commission, is to develop language that would restrict the use of live action trail cameras. Now, it's really important to point out, and this kind of goes back up to the Commission's authorities and the reason why we limited it to the take or in the aid of take of wildlife, because we felt if we went outside of that, that was beyond the Commission's authority if they're not using it in the take or in the aid of take of wildlife. And so that was the main rationale. We felt it was less restrictive in that aspect. It still allows for a lot more use of passive shell cameras, and also if they're not using it for hunting purposes or take in the aid of take of wildlife. We looked at water very broadly. We considered looking at restrictions on all types of water, rivers, lakes, streams. But again, as we analyzed that, we felt that was overly regulatory. Didn't believe that many of those water sources was a fair chase issue. For example, like Roosevelt Lake, that's a large body of water. We didn't feel that was a fair chase issue. Wildlife has a lot of different avenues to get water at a large body of water like that, as well as rivers, lakes, and streams. And also it is somewhat difficult to define some of those other types of water sources. So that was the main basis for not moving forward with that, and we restricted it to only developed water sources. We also looked at just establishing a camera season, open and closed dates for the use of trail cameras. The main rationale for not moving forward with that one was, again, that becomes very complex with our hunt structures. There's multiple species hunts that occur simultaneously with others. And so we felt it would be very difficult for the public to understand, when could they use a camera if there's an open bear season, if there's an open elk season. That could be very confusing to the public. And that also is related to same rationale, species specific. We looked at just doing it for big game. We looked at it for just deer and elk, but again, we didn't felt that completely address fair chase issues, and that it becomes pretty confusing to the public. If you're a deer hunter, you may not know when an elk season going or a turkey season or javelina season, and so again, we thought that was a level of complexity that would be difficult for the public to understand it as well. We didn't think it addressed all the issues in the Fair Chase Commission's policy. Specific units only, we looked at that as well. We get a lot of comments about strip units or premium units such as that. We looked at alternative management units as well, but again, it adds that level of complexity. It's less clear for the public. It's less consistent. And those are all things that we wanted to address. And again, if it's only species or specific unit specific, we didn't feel that completely addressed the Commission's fair chase policy. As far as looking at a more of a systematic approach to help regulate the cameras, we look at a camera registration system or labeling system. But again, we felt that was an overly regulatory a burden that would be put on the public to have to register a camera and administrate that. And so that was the main rationale in not moving forward with that one. Another comment that we got, many comments, was mirror the aircraft rule. If you're familiar, that's 48 hours from a big game season, but again, that becomes very complex because of our hunt structure and multiple hunts occurring at the same time, and it affects some units. There might only be 2 weeks available in any given season to actually be able to use it. So again, we felt that was adds a level of complexity. It's less concise, it's less consistent, and would be difficult for the public to understand. And so the language you have here, this is the current proposal. We made some clarifying changes to it, but this is the current proposal, and what we're going to ask for here in a few minutes is alternatives to this proposal, and that was specifically what the Commission had asked for, and so that's what we're wanting to get from you all tonight. If you have some thoughts or ideas or alternatives to this specific proposal, and I will I will read it. Bear with me. And then also there was some clarifications on some folks didn't understand the developed water source and what it was covering. Within 1/4 mile, 440 yards of the outer perimeter of a developed water source, a person shall not use any trail camera or images from a trail camera for the purpose of taking or aiding in the take of wildlife. And then related to that, the definition of a developed water source means any developed, placed, or man-made structure that collects or stores water with the primary purpose of providing water to wildlife or livestock. And so at this point, and Dave's going to help us out with this, we would like to hear from everyone that's here today that would like to provide some alternatives or some thoughts. We'd like to hear those now, that mainly things that was not previously considered by the department. So if you didn't have a white sheet, I'd ask you to get one so we can kind of track that, and then we'll call you by name, and then you can come up to we'll bring a microphone to you, and then you can give us those, and we'll capture it either here. And then after we're done with that, we'll take recommendations that we have from the folks that are watching online.
Hi guys.
Hand it over to Dave.
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm Dave Daniels. I'm a wildlife manager with the department, and I'm also part of the Article 3 rules review team. And as Jay said, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 64 pages of comments on this trail camera rule. And not exactly what we're looking for tonight is comments, but we're looking for ideas to possibly analyze, to take forward to the Commission next week. Different alternatives from things than we have already considered. So Dale is going to walk around with a microphone, and I encourage anybody, if you have a new idea we haven't thought of or anything like that, please let us capture it. Let us capture it here, and we'll take it back to our team. Anybody have anything?
I was in back, so I didn't hear what you said.
All right. Hello, my name is Mike Karnowski with Desert Christian Archers. who rebranded to Christian Hunters America. I've been part of Desert Christian Hunter since 2002. We've been a partner with Game and Fish, and the Commission is a partner for a long standing. So first, I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity. CHA did oppose this rule based on, the main thing was the rule was ambiguous and subject to personal judgment. So talking with a lot of our members and stuff, the way the rule is written, we were kind of looking at how the aircraft was with the 48-hour rule based on the deadline. A lot of the things we got from our members was, a lot of us go up in the summer, we put our trail cameras up, we get a tank. Our kids get a youth tag. Now, for the rest of our life, we can never hunt that tank because we had a cow elk tag on that tank. Because that image took a picture of a cow elk on all of these tanks because it's a family event. We can no longer hunt that particular tank if it's 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 years out. Because based on this rule, if we get stopped, have you had an image of a cow elk on this tank? I'd have to say, yes, I am guilty. Because based on the rule, you don't have a deadline. So part of what we want to see is there has to be a deadline and there has to be a grace period. And that's why we were looking at with the aircraft. You already have a rule that's in there. You stand by it. I understand that now, based on your comments, is that you don't want to create confusion, but we already have a rule, has specific guidelines. There are specific things. We don't allow that. So why can't we, if it's going to mirror this or mirror something else, let's have some language that gives a deadline. So maybe it's whatever it may be. And we understand there's overlapping different seasons here or there. It gets really confusing, complex. You may have people that have it for recreational. You may have other people that don't. And how would the officer determine if you're sitting in the ground blind, there's 3 cameras, is that your camera? Now it's becoming a, he said, she said, and it puts everybody in a really bad position. So based on the proposal that you showed with the aircraft, that kind of took away some of our thunder because that was kind of our thought and thing was let's get a deadline and let's get a date that we can at least know that that water hole is going to be banned for the rest of our lives, that we can never hunt based on a cow elk, a coos deer, a mule deer, whatever it may be. Because a lot of this is, as you said, this is about the ethics side. This is about the trophy animals. This is about looking for a specific animal and how we do that. And everything that we did talking and through the communication is, I'm not a guide. I've hunted on the strip. I've been born and raised here. I've hunted since my dad took me out since I was little. And I experienced all the trail cameras on the strip during my archery deer hunt. So part of the other part that we heard from our members was why can't the Game and Fish regulates all the guides? They collect a $300 fee, I believe, that says you're going to be a guide. This is all your rules. You guys give out commissioner tags. You raise all kinds of great money that goes back into wildlife. These people spend a lot of money. These guys do a fantastic job because they're doing their job. They have their clients come in. They bring in the forces, and they harvest this animal. And everybody loves this big animal because what it does the next year is it creates excitement, creates money, and what it does, it brings money back into. So part of what we hear from our side is we kind of, as a community, Game and Fish, the guides, us, because we all, part of the super raffles, we all want that chance to kill a once-in-a-lifetime mule deer on the strip or a Unit 9 bull tag or 10 tag. So how can we partner to come up with some solutions saying, we have guides, we're collecting fees, they're at a higher standard because they have all these rules, but everybody knows if you go on the strip, you might have 20 guys to get this one image, and that deer may be gone for a week and a half, and they're looking at every single hill. And that's okay. That's okay on fair chase because even though they got that image, but it's okay to have 25 guys out there looking for one animal because somebody saw it because they know that animal's going to be somewhere in that area. So part of it is we need to brainstorm how can we come together as a group and find some commonality to say, let's not penalize our guides that do a fantastic job because what they're doing is they're raising money, they're creating the excitement. Let's not penalize the general public, but come up with some rules. So maybe part of what some of those items, I forget all the items are, is maybe we do have a tag identification that goes back to the guides and they can have a certain amount in certain areas. Maybe it's part of having a restriction of a timeline, maybe a week. So I'm here to basically kind of bring some other ideas to make sure that we don't do something so drastic. And as you talked about, we don't want to do something so drastic that now we can never have a camera within a quarter mile that affects everybody. So
okay, so let's capture some of that.
give us some language.
Yeah, what was your idea to capture?
Our first choice was to mirror the aircraft at 48 hours.
Mirror the aircraft.
So that was the first choice.
Okay,
the next one is
that's one we've considered.
That was, you already considered that. We need to have some kind of date that does not restrict the general public. They'll never be able to hunt a water source if they put a game camera. So let's figure out somehow that we can create a deadline that a camera can be on there.
Like a start date?
Elk season, you have archery season, all these overlapping seasons, and you have bear seasons on and off. It's going to get crazy. But we need to have some kind of deadline.
So are you looking at a start and end date for a calendar year?
Well, it could be that. It could be, I don't know. Because basically what we were looking at was if you had the language as an aircraft, why can't we use that? And I know part of it was you don't want to create confusion, but we already have the confusion, even though it's probably a very limited number of people that can afford to have aircraft, but the language is there. And kind of similar to, if you guys remember, we had a huge issue, first come, first serve on water tanks. I mean, it was fighting, and I mean, there was a lot of issues. And I was part of that when I finally drew, after 13 years, having a Unit 9 tag. But what we learned is you guys have done a fantastic job of communicating, getting in the regulations, putting on Facebook and your posts. Now I think a lot of those issues are slowly going away because we're creating awareness where it's first come, first serve. So I think maybe part of this is maybe it's a discussion where we create some outreach, we create the new model, and we all hammer it. We all kind of have the same accord saying, hey, based on game cameras, this is the 48-hour rule, and we keep talking about it, and over time we're getting compliance, similar to the fighting over the water hole. So I'm just brainstorming a bunch of ideas of being involved, and I also don't want to partner us against you and us against the guides, but to me this is a community, and how can we come up with some solutions that's economical, logical, and how we can get to the finish line. So
this package is going in front of the commission on June 8th. Okay. And so what we're looking for is some language that we can go evaluate and see what we want to bring in front of the commission. And just on the trail cameras, I know there's a lot of ideas that you had on the guides and stuff like that, and that's going to have to be in another rulemaking process. But we're looking for some language.
The complexity. So can you go back to the other one, read the 10 items that you did?
Sure.
Just thinking outside. So you guys talked about we have a registration, a label system. What if you were to have some kind of rule that's, it could be started out as, it's going to be up to the public to be honest, and, it's no way we can force, and there's no way you guys can regulate it. That's impossible. Sure. So what if there was a way that you can somehow mirror the aircraft rule, and on the game cameras, there has to be some kind of label that states what your seasons that you're using that intended use for, and with a phone number or something.
So can we start off with the 440 yards?
So,
you're okay with that?
No. Okay. Our proposal is we want to see the game cameras on water sources, and we want to have some kind of deadline that's a restriction that we can never hunt these, because what we don't want to happen is I get an image and one of our kids get it, and then we can't tell our friends that there was a cow elk on this tag or whatever it may be, especially when we do a lot of mentor hunts and things like that. So part of what I'm thinking is just brainstorming is what if we mirrored something to the aircraft rule, and based on that, any individual that uses a game camera on a water source has to have some kind of identification that has their intended use. Something that they have to put on there, so if an officer comes on or somebody comes on there, it is marked on there, and that's part of what it is, and they know. Okay. I'm just thinking that becomes a personal responsibility, because there's no way you can enforce it. But I'm just trying to think how we can come up with a solution, or maybe somebody else has some great ideas. But instead of just saying, hey, this ain't going to work, trying to figure out some solutions that we can have some kind of commonality.
Sure.
And first thing I'm just thinking is we need to have a deadline, and maybe we somehow tie in a registration that's part of all of your guides. I believe everything I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these issues having to deal with the strips, some of these high-end stuff, where you have lots and lots of cameras, and a lot of those are being pushed by the guides, plus a lot of private stuff. But maybe we start with part of your guide licenses. You have to register those and label them, and then we phase in the general public and create awareness and things like that, and give some kind of grace period to let this start happening. What we don't want to do is create a bunch of rules. We start hammering a bunch of people, because that's not a good thing. But similar to our first come, first serve the water sources, we take it slowly, we educate, and we keep building on it.
Sure.
And so maybe 5 years from now, after this model, we say 5 years, this is what our new rules are for 5 years based on this model that we're looking at. So
does he have it captured okay? Because we're going to take this back this week and analyze all these.
Trail cameras level from 2 days, 48 hours.
Help me.
Yep. So I'm thinking. So we have an individual who possesses a special big game license tag for special season under AR 12-415, or an individual assist or will assist, such as a licensee shall not use an aircraft to locate wildlife beginning 48 hours before and during the commission ordered special season. So maybe just use that same language. I mean, you already have it. It's already a rule. Maybe you can mirror that. Then maybe tie a next piece to it, maybe add some accountability and start moving in that path to where it creates the general public.
I think he's got it captured. We're going to, and Amber's got it captured. Take a look at that and see when we're all done here if we've got it captured correctly, and if not, we can come back to it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Can I have it just a minute? I'd like to mention something about what he said. So on the aircraft rule, I don't see how you can have a rule and say that it's too complex. It's not too complex for aircraft, but it's too complex for people that use trail cameras. So is the commission saying that that people that use trail cameras aren't as smart as people that have airplanes? If it's an existing rule, it clearly works, and there's no reason in my mind that it wouldn't work for this. So I'm opposed to the 440 yards on water holes. I think it should mirror the aircraft rule. That's what I have sent to the department previously as well. And I think you need to clarify a little bit on what a developed water source is, because your example said that Roosevelt Lake is overly broad, but we only have 3 natural lakes in the state of Arizona, and Roosevelt Lake's not one of them. So that is a developed water source. So
To clarify that, developed water is something that was built for wildlife or livestock, and Roosevelt Lake doesn't qualify.
Is that new from the original
No.
proposal? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And just an observation on this fair chase document that you have. It seems like, they give 3 examples of things that they don't think are fair chase, and I'm not opposed to guides at all, but it seems like number 1 and number 3 would be not fair chase to hire a guide. To me, practice allows a hunter or angler to locate and take wildlife without acquiring necessary hunting skills. It seems like a guide does that. A practice that makes harvesting wildlife almost certain, when the practice prevents wildlife from eluding take. That seems like that applies to guides too. So I'm not opposed to guides. I'm just saying I don't think these are a good example of what's not fair.
What would you like to see on this rule? We're looking kind of for ideas. So your comments are valuable, and we read every single one of them. We have 60-something pages of comments that our team sits down and reads every one of them. And at the end of this, there'll be a place to send all the comments you want, and we'll read all of those. Really what we're looking for is some ideas. What would you like the rule language to be?
Well, I want it to be as minimally restrictive as possible, because, in my opinion, putting out trail cameras, pulling them, enjoying the pictures has become a whole recreational activity that a lot of people enjoy. And it's a great off-season thing. It gets people in the outdoors. It brings money to the economy. I see very few negatives to it. If you're convinced that it has to be regulated, I think not allowing it 24 hours prior to the hunt that you plan to hunt. So if you have an elk tag and you can't use it, or 48 hours, I'm sorry, just like the airplane rule.
Okay, so you're saying 48 hours prior to your particular hunt that you're drawn for. Okay.
And unless I'm mistaken, the aircraft rule has been an issue on some of these commissioner tags and raffle tags where they can hunt 365 days a year. So it's my understanding that prevents those people from using that. So most of these trail camera problems where there are 10 or 15 trail cameras on the same water holes in these concentrated areas like the Strip are caused by the guides guiding for the commissioner and raffle hunters for the most part. So in some respect, that could address that just like it addressed it. The airplane rule addressed it.
So the reason we kind of found the airplane rule a little bit confusing if applied to cameras, the airplane rule is you cannot fly 48 hours before any hunt. So that would be probably, if that mirrored this, that would be your cameras could be out in Unit 22 and 23 for probably 2 weeks, because there's hunt after hunt after hunt. And some other units it would be different. So it would be different restrictions in different units. Is why we found it a little bit confusing.
I think it's confusing. I think the aircraft rule is a little confusing. It should be tightened up, in my opinion. But as far as the wording, I would like it to say your specific hunt. If you have an over-the-counter tag, then it's 2 weeks or 2 days prior to that particular time frame. So
that
archery deer has 3 different time frames during the year.
Sure.
So you could put them out again after the first one closes, but you have to take it down 24 hours before the second.
Okay, we'll capture that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, quick question.
Go ahead.
Because it ends with commission's ordered special season. So you're saying that the commission ordered special season means it's the whole unit, it's not individual seasons based on the species? Because I'm just reading the rule, so based on the rule you're saying that would not, the way this is written, does not apply to the specific tag holders? Because when he talks about an individual who possesses a special big game license tag for a special season under the yard numbers, or an individual who assists or will assist such a license shall not use an aircraft to locate wildlife beginning 48 hours before and during the commission ordered special season. So
Okay.
I guess my question is, so
That is particular to special big game tags, I think. And there's another aircraft rule for the other non-permit tags and stuff like that, I think. Am I right, Amber?
It is in relation to individual hunts as a whole, so you can't, because the special big game tag seasons are year-round, it has an exemption for that, and so you can't use an aircraft within 48 hours before the first big game hunt in that particular unit established under our normal commission orders.
I think you're reading the part that gives the exemptions for the special big game hunters. Anybody else?
I'd first like to apologize if I repeat something. I have a big hearing disability, so I really haven't heard anything that's going on. The fair chase issue to me is kind of the big question from your things is, I've talked to some people here. I used cameras for 10 years. I don't see a fair chase issue in the places that I hunt. Just because an animal is on your game camera one day, he may not be there ever again, or it may be 2 weeks. Plus, public areas, we all know, is you think you have a spot and somebody comes and camps right in the middle of it. It moves our game everywhere. All the game cameras are doing is showing us there's animals in the area. So part of what I'm going to say is my recommendation is no changes. The next thing is, I think you guys, your committee needs to go back and say, if there's a fair chase issue, then I think you need to go back to one of your list. Is it the strip? Is it wherever? And you're probably going to have to specify certain areas. Yeah, is it going to upset some people? Okay, but you're the ones that are doing it. You're trapping the animals, you're doing whatever. But as a rule, I don't see this as a state of Arizona problem. If it's a specific area, let's not do the knee-jerk reaction and take out the whole state. Let's target the problem area. Oh, the other problem I guess I have is, how are you going to enforce this? I put a camera there, and I didn't know what the issues were, so I brought a show and tell with some animals that I was going to use. It's not, that's not the issue. So if I was not the most honest hunter, if you ask me about my camera, I'm a bird watcher. I'm an animal lover. I'm taking pictures of elk, deer, and whatever. I don't see how you're going to enforce this unless you're going to be writing search warrants for everybody's houses and say, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to go through your computer and see if you have a picture of that water hole
Sure.
and has that elk on there.
Let's first capture what you said before. So you want no change to the current rule unless we identify a certain unit that has this problem.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, let's capture that.
Because all I'm hearing here is everybody's confused.
Uh-huh.
I think, I think it said 2012, it kind of started 15s when things really kicked off. It sounds to me like there's still way, way too much confusion over what we're trying to accomplish. Like I said, I don't think there's a problem, so don't change the rule.
Okay.
If there is a problem, identify that problem, because there's nothing worse than knee-jerk reactions and trying to cover a rule that covers everything. They don't need it around Prescott, where I'm from. There's just way too many people. So no change, identify your problem and address your problem. And then again, the problem you're going to have to come up with is, how in the heck are you guys going to enforce anything you come up with?
Appreciate that. You want to attack enforcement?
Yeah, so, we would attack it like we would any other regulation, law, or statute that we have. Our officers, you have to gauge it by the totality of the circumstances, the information that you get, interviews with people, contacts in the field, and we wouldn't address it any differently than we do other regulations. We have other regulations that are difficult to enforce, and we do make cases on that. So that was our thought, we're going to address it like any other regulation, law, rule, statute.
Well, and I can see that to a point. I mean, you can't camp within a quarter mile of a water hole. In 45 years going up on the rim, there's 4 different campsites right next to water holes, and I've never seen anybody ask to leave. So again, the enforcement part of this is going to be a total nightmare for you guys to try to do it.
Appreciate it. We have some difficult regulations to enforce, but we do our best. Anybody else have any ideas? Okay.
Hi, I'm Representative Gina Cobb, and I represent District 5, which is Mojave and La Paz County, so we're talking about my area. And just to let you know, I'm not just a state representative. I am a hunter and part of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, and I represent Arizona in our Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus. So I do have a vested interest in this. And a couple of questions and a couple of things that I wanted to address, because I started out working with these gentlemen on the fair chase back in 2015. And I'm definitely, they've come up with some great ideas, and we've kind of batted them back and forth during this whole process. One of the things that we're talking about enforcement, this proposed language, everything in here is as far as I'm concerned, is I'm going to speak for it. Except for the part that says, for the purpose of taking, aiding, and of a take wildlife, for a couple of reasons. One is, how far back do you go? When do you take the pictures? It puts the proof of burden on the game and fish to be able to prove that it was taken. The enforcement part of that is difficult. So if you just take that out, it's just saying that you should not allow trail cameras within a quarter mile. We've been enforcing that, just what you said. One of the laws that we have right now is the camping. And with camping in a quarter of a mile. Well, if the game and fish are out there and they're looking for someone that's camping too close, it's the same thing. They're looking for somebody that's too close or has a camera too close. This is not restricting on private lands or on trails. And that's what a trail camera is for trails. And you think that just up in the strip area, I got a picture on here right now, someone that sent me a couple of days ago in Area 18A has 3 cameras sitting on a water hole right now. So it's not just in one area, it's in several areas. I, as a hunter, see them all over the place myself, so I know that they're out there. And it's difficult sometimes because, especially with the moving or the remote, when they were doing the remote, and I understand that that's not on the table tonight, but that was also an issue. I've had several friends, relatives that have been hunting up on the Colorado Strip area. I've been up there helping them. I've seen what's happened up there. I think there's something that needs to be done. A couple of things that we talked about. One thing I need to probably say more than anything else is that we have learned that if we do not do something ourselves, somebody else is going to do it for us. This year we dodged a bullet with the CAT regulations and the initiative that was going to go out there. We dodged a bullet on that one. Well, that's not going to happen again. In 2 years from now, it's going to come back again, more than likely, and there's going to be something on this, I guarantee it. And if we don't do it, it's going to be an initiative, and it's going to be the public deciding for us. Now, as a legislator, that's difficult for me, because let's look at Prop 206 that just happened with the minimum wage. We tried to pass that law, Prop 206 minimum wage, through the legislature. It didn't get passed, so it ended up getting passed as initiative. Now we can't touch it. We can't adjust it. We can't do anything with that at all. So one of the things that we have to think about is being proactive, because if we're not proactive, we're going to get an initiative against it, and then we have to live with that initiative, and we can't change it. It's not changeable without a 2/3 vote, and that's very difficult to happen. And so one of the things you have to think about as hunters is that you have to think about how can we be proactive in this and how can we do this in a good, responsible way so that we're not going to have an initiative come out on this 2 years from now. And that's going to happen. A couple of the constituents wrote in and told me, because I guess they can't get in on the webinar. I don't know if they're not connecting in. Are they? Are you getting comments in on that? Okay, all right. Because I had a couple of them said, where would we be if Teddy Roosevelt had, given up in his stance in the conservative wildlife and hunt fair, ethical manner? And this is from John Still. Is that one of them? And then let's get back to the basics of hunting and learn how to read a track. And don't look at a camera, and that was Jim Cave. And then Jordan Fuqua said we need to rid all developmental water resources of trail cameras within a quarter of a mile. That was the young man that actually sent me the 3 trail cameras on 18.8 yesterday. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any ideas that we can take back and analyze for some language to give to the commission next week?
Real quick, I just want to clarify, because I think you said early on the commission does not have authority. That's why you guys put the specific wording in there. So this proposal would not be valid because the commission does not have authority to enforce this. They can only enforce based on the
So to answer your question, in rule, we can only govern the take of wildlife.
Correct.
And that's what we're doing here in rule.
Correct. So this proposal would not be valid because that would restrict everybody. You don't have the authority to enforce that rule. Correct?
We don't, but it can be done elsewhere. But we can't do that right now with this rule.
Yeah, just to clear,
within your Article 3,
correct. We cannot.
You cannot do that rule within Article 3.
Generous, like you pointed out, that there's statutes that do that specifically, like the camping one. That's a statute. This is rule.
Can I ask just a question?
Hang on. He's
Game camera on a water hole restricting fair chase. All it's doing is taking their picture. How does a picture take fair chase? I don't see the correlation there.
The one component of it that I think is probably most germane to the cameras is, let me see, is the very first one there, allow a hunter or angler to locate, and as hunters we know that's one of the most difficult things to do is to locate wildlife, and this use of technology does that for you, and you don't necessarily have to be there. You go get your SD card and you have the image, you have the time, location, where that animal was. So we felt that it violated that component of the fair chase policy.
Go ahead back there, please.
Say the same thing about a meadow. If you know a meadow, they're going to be there at a certain date, certain time. Meadow, water, like I said, I think we need to figure out, is it a problem?
I agree with him.
Okay.
Who pays for all these water holes? Sportsmen, right? So why are you guys regulating us? Let us use what we've paid for. Butt out. We don't need any more regulations. You guys have enough regulations on hunters. Leave us alone. Let us hunt. I work full time. I don't have time to take weeks off like guides do, and I fully support these guys for doing that as their job. But we paid for it. Y'all need to leave us alone. And leave it alone. We paid for everything. I don't have time to take weeks off and go scouting and where do you guys draw the line? I mean, four-wheel drive? I mean, you're going to start restricting people who have four-wheel drives or side-by-sides and razors, or you're going to start restricting certain types of camo, like Sitka or QU, and these guys that do this? It's a joke. You guys should be embarrassed to stand here and present this to the public. Seriously. And how do you guarantee pictures success? Just because you have a picture of something doesn't mean you're going to actually sneak out and kill it. I have hundreds of pictures of big mule deer, and I haven't killed one. So, okay. And I mean, you have when you have optics. You guys are chasing the wrong thing if you're really chasing something for fair chase. Look at optics. You have optics, you can see a mile. I mean, how's that fair to the animal? The animal doesn't even know you're there, let alone a firearm that can shoot 1,200, 1,500 yards. I mean, that animal got struck by lightning as far as he's concerned. Like, you guys need to leave us alone, seriously. But
Thank you. So your recommendation is to do nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you for your time. Dale? Yeah, we're looking for ideas, guys. And if your comment is to do nothing, that's already on the board. What other alternatives can we bring to the commission? Because we've been asked to bring some. Go ahead.
I would say let's get rid of the quarter mile, maybe make it 100 yards.
Okay.
If you want it out of sight, let's have it out of sight, out of mind, and these guys won't whine about them. You still have to maybe ambush it, still have to pick an area easier. Another thing I've said all along, let's get rid of them on the fish and game trick tanks. Those
Okay.
giant ponds, you don't cover them. I'm out there all the time. There's impossible to cover a giant pond with trail cameras. So
Okay, let's capture this then. You're thinking quarter mile is too far.
way too far.
Okay.
The problem is that's where the fawns are when
Sure.
they drop the ground. We're going to have 20 cameras around there instead of one. And now I'm there for 2 hours walking around. The fawns are on the ground. It's a disaster.
Okay, so let's capture that. You'd like to see 100 yards instead of a quarter mile. And you also said something about the size of the water. So would you like to
I just
see
think your own trick tanks that you guys have built,
just the game and fish
that
trick
would get
tanks
rid
or
of half
the
the cameras on the strip. Since the strip's such a big problem, which I don't see, I'm out there all the time, but if it is such a big problem,
game and
get rid
fish
of
water?
half of them just by doing your own trick tanks.
Okay.
We wouldn't have to worry about the ponds, and that gives people cameras somewhere to go, and we can do the distance away from them others, which I still think is not good, but
Thank you.
an idea.
Any other ideas on alternatives to take to the commission next week? Anything online? So Celeste is going through the people that are watching on the web or listening or however they do it, and is going to see if they have any ideas or alternatives.
So I think we have one
You got
more in the audience.
one more?
so we'll
Okay,
get to that.
go ahead.
Just because I don't know what else we're doing here, I'm going to speak about, I would say no action whatsoever is my proposal. For a couple of reasons, which is long. But the first and foremost one is, and Jay spoke about it, the rule number one on the fair chase, technology or practice that allows a hunter or angler to locate or take wildlife without acquiring necessary hunting and angling skills or competency. If we want to dig into technology that helps that, laser rangefinders, binoculars, all that stuff.
Sure.
As we all know. Trail cameras are not in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion, benefiting in the take of wildlife. Now, the finding wildlife, but here again, it's a tool to find, to locate wildlife, such as binoculars are. It's no different. They're more or less just a tool. The other thing on the fair chase thing itself is basically in a manner that does not give a hunter or angler improper or unfair advantage over such wildlife. I have yet to be shown an advantage to having that, to take that wildlife at that time. I don't know anybody, and we've, some of these guys too, they run hundreds of cameras in a given unit, and I have yet to see anybody harvest an animal that day based off of that picture. It's just not happening. A deer could be out in the parking lot right now, and we get a picture on a live feed camera even, and by the time you or me get out there, the deer's gone. My simplest argument to this, in terms of the technology and where do we draw the line, is a sonar bass boat, a sonar, fish finder. nowadays technology's improved a lot. We have sonar fish finders. You can see your dang lure, literally right underneath you, and you see the fish. Your lure's right in front of it. The reality is that fish still has to bite the lure. That the guy out there with $30,000 bass boat, $50,000 bass boat, whatever, with a $5,000 computer screen on the front of his boat that shows him where those fish are and shows where his lure is, because the technology is so advanced, still really has no more advantage or unfair or fair chase to catch that fish than my grandpa and I when I'm 10 years old out there on a paddle boat rowing along with no technology whatsoever and a bobber and a worm. The fish still have to bite. We have just as much of a chance, ethical chance, to catch that fish as anybody on the water.
Right, and to that point, as a team, we looked at that.
Right,
we looked at that for quite a while, and had that same decision on the fish finder.
Yep. And you draw the line nowhere. I mean, obviously, and I know a big part of this rule came from, of course, complaints on guys that didn't like them. The ethics committee that was informed, and a lot of those guys, in fact, most of them that I know have trail cameras and use them. To me, it's no different, and I've heard a gazillion, people. Oh, I show up on the water tank and there's 6 to 8 cameras, 10. Of course, I've heard 10 or 15, 20, but of course, I've never seen it. I hunt full time for a living. I guide full time. You've seen it? You've seen 20 to 30? I've never seen it. I'd love to see a picture. I have yet to see someone prove that. And I hunt full time.
Whoa, stop.
But
let's get back to why we're here, okay?
But nonetheless, and even with that being, let's say I do see 20 of them, I don't care. It in my opinion, it's better for everything. You put 10, let's just call it 10 to make it simple. Put 10 cameras on that water tank, okay? That, in my opinion, is better for the wildlife and better for the roads and the Forest Service. It's better for everything involved. I would rather have 10 cameras there that get checked once a week or once a month or however often than I would 10 trucks driving in on that road when it's raining, soaking wet, when it's dry, and driving in there at dawn and dusk to push wildlife off of that water like we've done in the past without trail cameras. The wildlife is actually benefiting by getting a break because there's not 10 guys or 20 guys driving in there all the time to check for tracks and walk all the way around, create scent. The wildlife is much more natural without the pressure because of the trail cameras. Because of the trail cameras, those wildlife, we don't have to go out there and check that camera, a week before the hunt or even during the hunt, for example. And we will. I'll go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon instead of, 8 o'clock in the morning when the milk or deer might water or whatever animal. So they're actually benefiting. Not to mention the Forest Service and the roads and the state land. It's much better for the roads. So everybody's actually benefiting, in my opinion, in terms of the Forest Service roads are being kept, less traffic and all that.
Have you sent all this in?
I have. I got a lengthy,
okay.
lengthy deal.
Then we've got it.
And so, but along with that, and I'm going to go back to the fishing thing real quick. It's no different. And I know a lot of people, I saw 10 trail cameras on the tank, so I got frustrated and left. I pull up to the lake with my bass boat, and I see 40 trucks in the parking lot with empty trailers because they're all out on the lake. Do I get frustrated and go home, or do I put my boat on the water and go fish? It's no different. I mean, just because I see 10 trail cameras there doesn't mean, first of all, that anybody's even there in the woods. I'm the only guy in the woods at that time, maybe. But, I'm still going to go try. I'm still going to go look and see. There might be 10 cameras on every water tank in a specified unit. It's irrelevant. There might still be nobody in there. So, it's just I realize a lot of this rule came to head because people were upset. Either their feelings were hurt because they felt like guides or outfitters or just people that had a lot of cameras were using them or whatever. But the reality is, it has no effect on wildlife, negative effects whatsoever. In fact, it's, in my opinion, and what we've seen is we're harvesting better age class animals because of trail cameras. Somebody sees a big deer, big elk, or whatever on that camera, and they may not shoot a smaller animal because they know the bigger one's there, and they may not shoot a bigger one.
Okay.
They may not shoot anything, but the wildlife, the upper age class.
Okay. We've got your comments.
No change whatsoever.
Your recommendation is no change.
Absolutely no change.
Okay.
Again, and another thing about that, there's absolutely no enforcement. It's going to be very hard to enforce it, as we all know. In fact, impossible, in my opinion.
Thank you.
So,
he brought up a good point. What made Game and Fish decide they needed to do this?
What brought this all about?
Yes.
So again, just part of the process, we have to look at our rules every 5 years. That's mandated. And so for that process, we start taking comments like we mentioned before since 2012. So early on, many of those comments that we received were wanting some type of restriction on camera. So we have to look at that. That's part of our process. We have to look at that. We have to evaluate it. Is it relevant? And then if you couple that with trying to adhere to our commission's fair chase policy, we felt that it did, and that's what led us to the decisions that we made and the analysis that we went through. We felt it was a concern, and we needed to do a regulation that is clear, concise, consistent, to make it simpler for the public to understand and for that body of regulation. So we looked at all of those factors. So long story short, we felt it was a fair chase issue, and we wanted to structure a regulation that it was clear and concise and can be implemented consistently. Like I said, it's been a long-standing concern. When the Fair Chase Committee was originally formed, part of their task was to look at things like emerging technology, and then establish a criteria. They helped develop the Commission's Fair Chase policy. So you couple all those things, and then you look at public comments, and that's how we went through the whole process of developing a proposal. And the public.
No.
And the public.
Amber.
Since the last rule review, we have received significant amount of comment that asked us to evaluate cameras and place restrictions on the use of cameras. Therefore, the team took a further look at it and applied it to our Fair Chase policy.
No, okay. My thing's not working here, but we looked at a lot of that stuff. We looked at a lot of that stuff, and we've actually come up with some language for a lot of that stuff, and that is all in the Article 3 package. This is not that, right? The Article 3 package as is being delivered to the Commission next week. What they kind of asked us to do was to look at the trail camera part, because it was pretty contentious, and come up with some other ideas or alternatives. And so that's what we're doing. But the rest of the package has some of that other stuff in it.
But with this fair chase, where do you guys draw the line? We're like, all right, enough's enough. They've got enough regulation. Where do you stop? Because trail cameras is just a baby step, in my opinion, too.
Sure.
Bigger and better things, just to limit the guys that are here and the guys that are listening on the forum.
Sure, and this rule is reviewed every 5 years. So as emerging technology and stuff like that, in another 5 years, another team will review it, and 5 years after that, another team will review it. This is kind of a fluid rule that gets reviewed every 5 years by statute.
So you can't run a truck camera where you can set 20 yards from a water bowl and a pop-up line. That's not fair chase issue.
And again, with that scenario, and again, we don't want to belabor. I know everybody's got other things to do tonight, but just to answer that one specifically is, with that scenario, you're in the field. You're sitting there. You're being quiet. You're hiding your scent. We didn't feel that is violating fair chase. I mean, Native Americans have been hunting water for a long time, longer than we have, and so, but they're out in the field. They are acquiring necessary skills because they got to be quiet. They got to hide their scent if they want to see anything. And so that was our thought process there.
I think you guys are going to hurt yourself. Now, if you guys,
Hang on, Caleb. Grab the microphone.
you guys ask for surveys and send us surveys all the time, and we're out in the field more than anybody. We got trail cameras. We're figuring out all the animals are in the areas. I got game and fish guys asking me, "What do you got over there? What's the bull ratio over there? What do you think we need to do or differently?" I wouldn't know unless I have my cameras. And glassing, yeah, I can glass. Yeah, I do it just as much as anybody else. But you guys are doing it. You're going to hurt yourself on it. It's a big survey that you guys know what you have and what you don't have. Us sportsmen help you guys out quite a bit. and I think this is going to hurt you more than anybody.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caleb. Anybody have any recommendations or ideas? We've captured all your comments. We are going to put a website up at the end of this. You can send more comments, and every one of them will be looked at. But give us some ideas and recommendations to move forward. That's what we need from now on. Go ahead.
If you have to regulate it, I'd just do a date thing, like January 1st.
A date? Okay.
August 31st.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Thank you.
If it's all about the hunts that everybody's complaining about, there's so many cameras around when they're hunting, then regulate it during the hunt season. Like
Okay.
September all the way to December 31st, if you have to do anything.
Okay. Thank you.
So how's that going to affect the auction?
Well, we'll look at that if that moves forward. That'll be part of the analysis when we look at all of these, right? How will that affect the auction owner? How will it affect the spring hunts? That's all going to be part of the analysis. Any other ideas?
It's not clear to me if this. It's not clear to me if this includes private land. It was my understanding that it was everywhere, but somebody over here, I believe earlier, alluded that it doesn't apply to private land.
That's a good question.
I heard a Game and Fish commissioner said, yes, we can regulate what you do on private land.
Because it relates to the take of wildlife. If that occurs on private lands, it would still be applicable. Same, you still have to have a tag, even though it's on private property, so it would still apply.
And you want it to apply? Have you guys given thought to doing private versus public? Or?
Yeah, and that'll be part of the analysis when we go through that. Any other ideas to analyze to bring to the commission next week?
Jay, can you go back and just explain the Fair Chase Committee and how that was formed? The originally? Because and I'll tell you why. Recently, I'm going to say personally at least, and probably most of the people in here, I know this has been dealt with you guys have been talking about it for a while. We talked about 2012. It's 2018 now. We've all heard rumors, of course, but per Game and Fish and public comment and all that stuff, we have just I'm going to say in the last 5 months, maybe 6, that I have heard about this actually being on the agenda or even being in the works. And now that I see this, Fair Chase Committee and stuff like that, when was that formed and how was it formed? I know you said it was like public comment came about, but can you go into some transparency on that for us, please?
Yeah. So the department started having discussions with the commission clear back in 2014 during the open public process, and it's at least that far back that the discussions about fair chase was started. I think what was on the department's mind was to be sure that as we developed this idea of fair chase and what it would look like, that it included members of the public, representatives of industry, and the department. And we have had individual commissioners play a part in it. That is really in keeping with one of the fundamental tenets of the North American model, which is creating policy through a public process. Then as the commission approved the policy on fair chase in 2015, that was again through a public process. So the lenses that the department looked at this through was, how can we build out a look at fair chase in a way that involves the public and through a public process. So that's how that was developed.
And so the actual the people that were on that, let's say, how could I get on that, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is there transparency as to, I haven't heard about it, obviously.
Sure.
I know it's on the inside, pick guys within the game fish or whatever the case may be. Where does the public actually get information, or where did that get formed in terms of, like again, most of us are just hearing about this in the past 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I know I speak for tons of the general public in the outdoor world where we're like, man, this is, we're hearing about it in the last 6 months, but it's been in the works for years, and we would have loved to have been able to raise these concerns before this vote,
Yeah, so there's a couple things there, and they're fair questions. one of the things I'd like to point out is we had many dozens of opportunities where we put this in front of the public. We could try our best to get it in front of the public. We can't guarantee it's going to reach everybody. The second part that's there is what I heard you say is you're volunteering to participate in the public process. Thank you for that. We'll catch that maybe after the meeting, and happy to discuss with you that. So certainly. I think it would be good if we could get the last. I know there's a lot of folks online who and a few of them have submitted alternatives for us to consider. If there are no more specific recommendations for the department to analyze on behalf of the commission in this room, I think it might be time for us to get the folks who are tracking with us online, read their recommendations into the record. The one thing I want to say is we had, at one point, 212 people online. Thank you all for tracking with us and participating in this public process. That's important. We're going through these, and a lot of what we've got on the computer are comments, either pro or con, very similar to what we've heard here, although not exhaustively representative of what we heard here. I wanted to tell the people who are online that we are catching your comments, but what we're going to reflect back to the group is the actual recommendations or alternatives to the ones we've already analyzed. And so how many of those do you have, Celeste?
Probably about 10.
Okay, so we're going to go through those real quick, and I wanted to say as we go through there, folks who are online who have submitted your comments, thank you. We've got them captured. We had 65 pages. Now we'll probably have 130 pages of comments, but we're committed to going through those. And Celeste, do you want to read those into the record?
Allow only 25 cameras per licensed person who wants to use a trail camera in a specific unit. They have to have a sticker issued by the department that identifies the owner of the camera, and they would be color-coded to the unit, and that we should implement a camera permit.
Yes. Amber got it. Amber captured it. And I think Celeste will keep it.
Another proposal is to allow cameras on water on a first-come, first-served basis, only one per water source. They're allowed to have them in place for 30 days, and then they have to remove them. The next person.
Can you guys hear Celeste when she's reading these in?
One is saying that it should only apply to a hunter who has a permit, and that hunter should remove the trail camera 48 hours before the start of the permitted hunt. Another one is another camera registration with them removing it 48 hours before. And then another one removing the camera 48 hours before their hunt. One says make it hunt specific. I can't use cameras for my hunt. And I think that's it for the recommendations that have come in.
Okay. So Celeste read in the online recommendations. Did you have one more recommendation you wanted to hear? Okay, what was yours?
So, thinking through this, and my understanding is a lot of this issue has to do with the strip. I believe that's where a lot of the driving force was during the strip. So why not do a pilot? So if you think back when we got rid of the baiting ban, there was a huge issue with the baiting ban. So what they did is they implemented mandatory deer reporting harvest. Once they got the bait ban done, the reporting went away because it was understanding that the deer were in that same level and they didn't need to have that reporting anymore. So it's almost like we're jumping so far ahead we're not thinking about it. Why not, number one, if our issues are on the strip, you have archery seasons, you have rifle deer seasons. They're not like a normal unit where you have all these ongoing seasons. So why not start it as a pilot with having this rule implemented with 48 hours on the strip only, 13A, 13B, that before the archery season, before the rifle seasons, those are implemented. Then all game cameras are removed during those hunts.
Okay.
Based on that. The second part, over the next 5 years, since we know we have 5 years, engage all of the guides, all the conservation groups, help us start creating outreach and awareness of what game cameras are, first come, first serve, the respect, kind of that same model where we start creating awareness to get rid of a lot of these conflict issues. And over the next 5 years, we change the culture to create awareness of partnerships and understanding and getting that message out there through your Facebook, through the rules, through all the different the guide services. Maybe they can do that, maybe through us, the public. So based on that, we kind of change the culture over the next 5 years. And over that time, we start identifying what some of those issues are that are ongoing. Then when 5 years comes down, we have all this data, and we actually address it at that time.
Okay.
Fair case. So
thank you. So
part of the recommendation would be to implement the 48 rule only on 13A, 13B, only based on you have the archery deer and the rifle deer. You don't have all the other conflicting seasons. Then we create an outreach through have another task force, maybe the same task force team on the fair chase. They bring in other members, and over the next 5 years, we start building the data, the facts, and we create a partnership of how we're going to implement this 5 years from now.
Sure, thank you. Okay, Jay has a few more slides to go through, so he's going to go through what happens next. He's going to go through the timelines and stuff on when we go in front of the commission.
Okay, so like Dave said, so we're going to take what we got tonight, and also, we'll be looking at the comments as well, because that's more background. But we're going to take and look at these, and then we're going to basically do the same process we did before, use the criteria that we used before, and run them through that process, also taking in consideration the more recent comments to help us with that background, and then we will provide a couple of alternatives to the commission in June. Now, like some of these, they might go to the commission in June, but some of them may not. We still have to go through that process and establish the ones we think that are most viable. So just to kind of a little bit more explanation of the process that we're going to go through coming up here on June 8th. So one of the proposals is the existing proposal that will also be presented to the commission. If they choose to approve that one, then this is the process that it would go through. So if the commission approved the existing proposal, that would occur on June 8th. It would have to go to the Governor's Regulatory Review Council by August 7th. If they approved it, we would likely they approve it, we could implement it on April 1st. That's the date that we selected. So it wouldn't apply this year. It would apply April 1st of 2019. Now, if the commission decides to look at one of these proposals that we looked at tonight that we bring forward to them, then that would likely cause a substantive change, which triggers a supplemental process. So we would have to basically submit that proposal, just that piece related to this, and then that has to go to the Secretary of State. It has to be posted. There's a comment period that would have to occur, that we would come back in September, bring that proposal back to the commission. If they approved it, then it would go to GERC on December 4th, and then if they approved it, it would again go live April 1st. So regardless, we think we can get an April 1st implementation date. And again, like I said earlier on, the commission can take no action, give us other direction. We can amend it. So they'll have some options available to them in June, and also just take the camera portion out as a potential one of the options. So those are the main processes that occur moving forward. And we started, and again, we're going to take all this back, provide some proposals to the commission on June 8th.
Why didn't we go with August 14th instead of April?
Yeah, what's the reason behind April 1st? Nothing else is.
August 14th is the last day of the governor's tags on that. I don't see why we're shooting to cut them off halfway through.
When you look at all the hunts combined for big game, there's seasons that run pretty much throughout the year. And so August or April 1st was a time frame that didn't affect as many hunters. Yes, it did affect the auction tag hunters, but most other big game hunters, those seasons where we're really starting up are later in the year, and therefore an April 1st wouldn't be as wouldn't have as much of an effect. Hunters would be able to plan ahead and know what the rule was well in advance.
Except for the guys who spend all the money and already are planning on hunting till that date. I mean, I can tell you for sure it'll end up in court on that. And I mean, I know you guys don't care, but I mean that.
No, we do, and the April 1st date was actually a conscious discussion on how can we affect the least hunters, and that's what that was. So that another date is something we can look at.
Well, I just think they've already purchased them, and
Huh?
we're planning on hunting till the 14th.
Sure.
And then they're done. I don't know why we just wouldn't implement it on the 15th, and
Sure.
and wouldn't have to worry about them guys,
Yeah, and go ahead and submit that comment. We will read it.
Okay.
We are going to be reading that all week long until we get to the commission meeting. So.
I have a question on that, just for myself and others. So, as far as the comments, June 8th is the meeting. You guys are taking comments all the way up until then, correct? From email.
Correct. There's the email address right there.
Thank you.
Keep sending them. Yep, and the commission meeting and their review of the package.
The commission meeting on June 8th is in Payson at the Matazel Hotel and Casino, and it starts at 8 o'clock. I think the item. Do you remember, Celeste, when it's up? It might be after lunch, I think. Was that? It's pretty deep into the. I would just go on the website and look at the agenda. It's pretty deep in the agenda, so it's likely to be in the afternoon.
Okay, guys, thank you. Do you have Craig or Jay have anything else? We appreciate everybody coming out. We appreciate your ideas. We appreciate your comments. Feel free to keep sending comments, and the team will look at every single one of them. We have been for the last 2.5 years.
I'd echo that, guys and ladies. Thanks for coming. Thanks for participating online. And a lot of you feel strongly about it, but this is the public process, and we appreciate you coming and participating. So thank you.
Thank you again, everybody. Appreciate it.